Hello everyone, in this video I want to give you some background information on the creative process behind the drum parts in last week's Sunn video. It's not exactly a drum cover as there are no drums on the original track, but rather a reimagination with drums. You can either go and watch it from the link below or wait for the audio commentary on this one. After a general introduction, I will have the video play and comment on the different drum parts. For quite some time now I have been thinking about doing a phasing video. The concept of phasing has been around for ages, but in the Western musical tradition it has been made popular in the 1960s by minimal composers such as Terry Riley and especially Steve Reich. His compositions It's Gonna Rain and Drumming are just two great examples of the technique. It's Gonna Rain makes use of the fact that no two analog tape machines run at the exact same speed. Reich took two tape loops, in this case a snippet of a field recording of a street preacher, and had them play at the same time on two different machines. Inevitably the two loops went out of sync after a while, and the two phasing parts created new rhythmic elements. After some more experiments with tape loops, Reich went on to transfer the concept to instrumental parts in his compositions, the best known of which is probably drumming. I won't go into further detail here, but I might do an in-depth video about the concept in the future. While thinking about ideas for such a video, I happened to be listening to a lot of music by the American drone metal band Sunn. The two guitar players Stephen O'Malley and Greg Anderson blend the heavy guitar sounds of metal with a very reductionist ambient aesthetic. Deliberately playing without a rhythm section, the compositions are often meditatively slow and mostly quite long. At some point I thought I would like to try to come up with a drum part for one of their songs. And as I was pondering the phasing concept at the same time, I decided to combine the two ideas. I chose the track Descent Ascent, an 18.5-minute live track recorded in either 2009 or 2010. With no recognizable tempo, it gave me the freedom to entirely choose my own groove. As Sunn are a band in the metal tradition, I wanted to avoid doing a metal drum part. That would have been too easy. Because of my love for electronic music, I decided to do a techno groove. Surprise. The minimal aesthetic of which also lends itself very well to the whole phasing thing. While doing some more research for this video, I found out that part of the album this track was taken from was actually recorded at Berlin's Berghain. So for once my intuition was spot on. The basic idea was to come up with a drum part that was partly composed but still had an element of improvisation to it. The biggest challenge was to create something that on the one hand would stay true to the core of Sunn's aesthetic, but could also sustain some kind of tension over the duration of the whole track. It's a thin line between drawing too much attention to the instrumental part and becoming just plain boring. The first thing I did was decide on a tempo and a basic groove, which in my case was 128 and a 4 on the floor groove with a 2 and 4 rim click. Then I just recorded myself playing along to the track, improvising with different variations of the main groove. The next step was to record another take, but instead of 128, this second one was recorded at tempo 127, which would provide the phasing part. I only wanted one part to do the phasing for most of the time, so the second track was a little more improvisational, but also a lot sparser with long periods of just 1 or 2 rim patterns. While transferring stems from one Logic session to another, some of the tracks didn't align properly, so that the close mics were in sync but the overheads were removed by 1/8 note. This happy accident gave me the idea of a third track that wouldn't phase but just complement the first track. So after checking that the phasing part actually worked, I went back to the drawing board. With these ideas in place, I ended up with a drum part that consisted of 3 tracks. Track 1 and 2 would make up the basic groove, while track 3 would add the phasing elements at tempo 127. Next up was figuring out an arrangement. My first takes gave me some ideas that I wanted to keep for the final versions, like build-ups and stops, but now I added some more elements. To get these ideas in sync not only with the backing track, but also among the drum tracks, I made a cue track for myself to record to. Listening to the Sunn track a couple of times, I wrote down some of the changes in rhythm and texture and places where I wanted to leave a little more space. Then, like in a modern pop click track, I recorded cues for different parts of the track. They would count me in whenever I wanted to drop out the kick or stop entirely for a break. This provided the compositional framework for the drum part, but left enough space for little improvisations like syncopated rim patterns or orchestration ideas. For the final version, I then did 3 complete takes, each time playing the whole 18.5 minutes from start to finish. As the track is so long and I didn't do any quantization, there are various small inconsistencies. First, I missed some of the cues, and sometimes track 1 and 2, which are supposed to be in sync, start to shuffle a little bit before lining up again. But I decided to leave these flaws in, because if I wanted perfect, I would have programmed the whole thing from the start. Having completed the recording process, I then took some liberties with the arrangement. Track 1 was left as is and runs throughout the song. With the other 2 tracks, I decided when I wanted them to come in or drop out, and in the case of track 2, I also shifted sections by an 8th or 16th note in different places. Track 3 allowed me to pick and choose the places where I wanted the phasing to happen, and I would take it out in sections where I wanted it to be just a groove. All 3 tracks were recorded with the same drum kit, but track 2 features a different hi-hat, a pair of Zildjian 10-inch effect heads instead of the main 15-inch light heads. To get the pumping kick drum sound of the main groove, the second track has a big portion of the raw audio from the camera in the mix, which provides a nice contrast to the sound of the main track. So much for the background information. I will now play the video and point out some of the things that are happening in the drum tracks. Starting with only the backing track, only guitars, and track number 1 is coming in around the 20-second mark with only the rim click on 2 and 4. Here we go. This is track number 1 at tempo 128. Next up is track number 2. Here we go again, tempo 128, but 1/8 note removed. So instead of 2 and 4, we get 1 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And track number 3. This is the one that was recorded at tempo 127, so even if it's playing the same pattern, it starts phasing immediately. Now the hi-hat is coming in, shuffling between the 2 different hi-hats. Now the third hi-hat is coming in. This is the only time in the track where more than one element is phasing at the same time. In this case, it's the hi-hat and the rim between tracks 1 in the middle and track 3 on the left hand side. The whole point of the phasing thing is the emergence of different patterns that come up and then disappear again. If you listen only to the rim, you can hear interesting patterns coming up, staying for just a short while and then dissolving into something else. The bass drum is coming in, track number 3 drops out, and for the first time we have the main groove going on between track number 1 and 2. track number 3 coming in with the rim. Nice pattern again. And disappear. Catches up with track number 2 and flaming again. Now the rim starts a syncopated pattern, which makes the phasing a little more complex. Gives us some different patterns. Bass drum at the hi-hat providing the constant beat. Back to the main groove of track number 1. Giving the guitars a little more space again. There's actually a lot going on in the backing track, and I missed some of the cues that I could have emphasized with the drum part. I actually tried to play track number 2 1/8 note removed, but failed miserably, so I recorded it on the beat and moved it in post. Now track number 3 comes in with the bass drum only, and this is the only time when the bass drum is doing the phasing. You can hear it flam now. I like this pattern. It's more metal than techno. And now it's catching up with track number 2 again before it disappears. Now the bass drum is gone on all 3 tracks. But the rim is starting to phase now. Bass drum is back. Track number 3 is gone again. Again, this is just an orchestration variation with a flam on the snare drum. first time track number 1 and number 2 are a little uneven. Start to shuffle a little bit before they settle in again. But it's a very long track and it's quite hard actually to play this simple groove for such a long time. Now it sounds a little better again. And track number 3 coming in again. With a syncopated pattern this time. First stop is coming up, but first we have only bass drum and hi-hat for a while and no rim. Now you can hear the different sounds of the bass drum on track 1 and 2 and also the difference between the two different hi-hats. Part, a very short one before the stop comes up. Let's see. Here comes the rims again. This time track number 1 with the syncopated pattern. Number 3 also comes in. And gone. Now here's the stop. Hear the movement in the guitar part and back to the main groove of track number 1. This time with a syncopated rim pattern. And back to the main pattern. It's just a small variation. Uneven again. Now we got all 3 tracks with the syncopated rim pattern. Only bass drum and hi-hat are providing the steady groove, and all 3 rim parts are syncopated, which make the phasing part a little more chaotic and sound almost random actually. But there's always small snippets of patterns that sound very nice and then they dissolve into something more chaotic again. Back to the simple rim part, and immediately it gets a little more ordered. And now the hi-hat has changed because I'm playing doubles now, and This is one of the cues that I gave myself on the cue track, which told me when to start doing the doubles on the hi-hat. Immediately it's gone again. Here's a new one. Another one. Hi-hat dropping out. Next stop coming up. Here we go. Wait for it. Now track number 2 is coming in, only 1/16th note removed, which gives us a more complex 16th note pattern. I think this nicely lifts up the whole track as we are nearing the end. Last time track number 3 is coming in. Again, only with the rim. Bass drum is dropping out. Next up is the hi-hat, which leaves us with the last piece of phasing of the rims. Moving from an 8th note pattern to flams to roughs. Flams. Almost roughs. And that's it. If you are nerd enough to still be here and watching, I want to express my sincere thanks, because you are most probably one of a select few to sit through a niche video like this. Thank you and see you in the next one.